Hello and welcome to the FootballCo Business Podcast. I'm your host Alex Manby, and today I'll be talking to Dan Wood, co-founder of the World Freestyle Football Association, which is of course the world governing body for the sport of freestyle football. We'll be discussing the still relatively young sport, its recent history and rapid growth in spite of COVID-19, and how brands, clubs and even behemoths like UEFA have turned to freestyle to drive fan engagement. Dan, welcome to the show.
Many thanks, Alex. Good to see you.
So let's start at the beginning of this journey you've been on. How and when did you get into freestyle?
So for me, it began back in 2006, at which point freestyle was not freestyle. It was literally keepy uppy. To you and I, it was very much a street pop-up activity that people played. And the occasional one or two individuals were being picked up and being invited to do performances for brands or TV commercials as body doubles. And so I stumbled into it. I launched my first company, which was working with street soccer in general as a diversion tool to get young people off the streets and into education, employment. And I just met the freestylers and thought, wow, what an incredible bunch of people, first of all, and what influence they already had. You could see it in street shows, hundreds of people gathering around them in seconds. And so, that was the first moment I was like, wow, there's something powerful here that is, not conforming, but that can really speak to people and speak to football fans and all fans of sport in general.
And at what point did you realise that a formal organisation like the Wffa was required?
So upon befriending the community and understanding their needs and individual desires and vision, let's say, I simply saw it as an opportunity. There was no demand for it. That was the key thing. It was a very organic evolution into where we got to now. So upon deeper conversation and understanding who they were as people and role models, I saw this chance to say, literally, what if we could create a rule book? What if we could say, this is what you represent, this is how you did it? And one of the beautiful things that I love the most is that all you need is a ball. So you don't even need a trainer. So it's how to capture that with their experience and the way they learned, and then elevate it to bigger audiences. So, as I said, it was no foresight to say, certainly not on a personal level, to say I want to create a world federation. It was purely, let's create a movement, let's listen more and see what comes out of this. And I was obviously, the only counteract to that was speaking to the authorities that be in the football industry, especially. I was talking to people at FIFA and at the brand side through Adidas, Nike, just to sort of check the lay of the land and make sure there was no we didn't want to step on toes. This was very much about just a lifestyle, supporting a lifestyle for more young people. And thankfully, as we all know, there's no goals involved. So on that alone, we differentiate and we celebrate freestyle as its own sport.
For those who haven't seen it before, what does a tournament look like? How frequently do they take place? What's the equivalent of the World Cup? Give us a glimpse into that world of competitive freestyle.
Yes, so at the absolute beginning, freestyle football, for anyone who hasn't seen it, is the art and now sport of juggling a ball, keeping it in the air, using all parts of the body to entertain on the artistic side or to outperform an opponent on the sporting side. The main competition that we have for the world rankings to be qualified is a battle. So you might liken it to a breakdance battle if you've seen any dance competitions, but with a ball in the middle.
So winners and losers in these battles, and that's decided by judges like Olympic boxing or audience cheering like an 8 Mile style rap battle?
I'd love to say it was more the latter, but it's very in sync with official boxing in that regard and sporting competitions. There's a set criteria that the judges, our experts in the field, are looking for. We occasionally have some celebrity judges as well, because of the link to music and football and arts in general. So It's we frequently have a celebrity judge that focuses on style, so it's a very more of the subjective side. But ultimately, is a measured battle. The fans' participation is more on the content. It's so easily shareable that the fans really get involved to, express their feelings about this on social media and share it with their followings.
So some similarities, clearly a lot of differences as well between football and freestyle. I suppose you could say football is ubiquitous. Wherever you look, wherever you turn, live, on demand, digital TV, print, whatever, football is ubiquitous. It feels like freestyle probably has a natural home more on social media, and we touched on this very briefly earlier, platforms like TikTok and Instagram. Would you agree with that? How crucial are these platforms to the sport of freestyle?
Absolutely, they're critical. Freestyle has always actually been there in the streets, and I always say this as well, that wherever you see football, freestyle will be in the street. It's where there's a football fan and a community, people will try and juggle the ball, whether they know it's freestyle or not. It's just a natural street game to play, and we're literally just trying to popularize that even more now. But yeah, ultimately this was born properly as freestyle is now, was born at the start of the 21st century, when social media, when the internet started to really kick in, because suddenly you could benchmark, you could see people doing this around the world, and people felt like there was a home. They saw I'm sure everyone will remember the Nike Joga Bonito campaigns, which inspired a lot of people at that time as well to say, this is something I can do in my backyard, and I want to learn that skill. So that popularized it 100% thanks to social media and the internet. And now, because of how easy it is to share short form content, great role models, anyone can do it. So it gives you, it's natural that it sits in that sphere.
And I've just guessed Instagram and TikTok there. Is that fair, or are there
Definitely
other social platforms?
Yeah. I mean, YouTube was the first big one, really, but then it's very specific for those who want to create longer form content. And every freestyler is between TikTok and Instagram. You're absolutely bang on. Just because of how interactive you can be with it and how visual it is, it just sits innately on those platforms.
Any marketeer worth their salt will know that TikTok and TikTok especially, but also Instagram, has a younger audience than other social platforms, hosting this predominantly video short form content. Do your analytics and studies agree with that? Does freestyle have a younger audience than perhaps other sports?
It does in participation terms, but in terms of popularity and audience numbers, it would replicate anything else that you see out there. To be honest, it's a very family friendly content as well. So it really does relate to all ages, and actually, I think because of the accessibility, and especially mentioned it for the second time already due to the COVID, the last couple of years, where parents are looking for more positive activities for their kids to do at home without having to travel and to invest in lots of equipment. Freestyle has become a very easy source for people to adopt.
So let's talk about COVID. I'm sure you're not celebrating anything about it, but it sounds like perhaps its overall impact on the sport has been positive, or at least helpful in a certain way.
Yeah, if we look at visibility, you have to say that. From little things like toilet roll juggling challenges that went viral, even things like that, which normally would have been, it's just a bit of fun. People were starting to tag in, our hashtag, all you need is a ball, and use that. So a ball can mean anything in different contexts. So 100% there was more following, there was more sharing of content than ever before. And we also had a lot of luck that, our partners at Red Bull literally embraced our first concept. So as soon as lockdown was announced, we had to cancel events like everyone. But we said, listen, this sits on social media, so let us just do the same event, but we're going to build it over 6 months and have different stages each month, and it will sit as a a live event, but virtually from the homes of all these amazing freestylers around the world. So yeah, we just kicked straight into gear. It was an easy transition, let's say, to just embrace social media.
I suppose already living predominantly, or at least largely, on social meant that it wasn't a huge transition to move across. How does freestyle find a balance then between being entertaining, snackable, always on, fun, shareable, social content, and being a serious sport? Or is that a total non-issue?
We could make an issue from it, of course, but no, for me it's a non-issue. There's enough content and there's enough event in terms of the calendar for us absolutely to be taken seriously. What we're at right now is this amazing stage of growth where it's just recognizing our ambition meets reality of what we can actually fulfill. So there's broadcast packages ready to go right now. There are still, we're back up to 50 plus events now already planned for next year. There's education content, there's whole, which was another passion for mine from the very start, with going back to that. How do we educate through this sport? The content that can be delivered, when ready, when we find the right partners, is ready to go. But we're not running into that. I guess that's the answer there. Is that we're not expecting and rushing into it, because we, on the flip side, have this dilemma of we're free to play. So we don't really want to necessarily go down the traditional, or not even traditional now, but the current OTT system that everyone's trying to suggest. It's like, oh, you should put this on OTT, and I get this comment every other week probably from someone who's worked in industry for many years. But the reality is that our audience, at least our core community audience, don't want that. They don't want to be paying for one event when they know that it's free and you can go and just play in the street. So we have a few dynamics that we have to balance. But to answer your point, it's ready to be rolled out on a much greater level. We're just buying our time, and we're seeing what comes next.
Great. I'm liking the perception of the WFFA as sort of the guardian of online sport, while others are going behind paywalls. The WFFA prioritizes audience and what they want. You mentioned partners there, Dan. Clearly, brands and indeed rights holders want to be a part of this. That's something we've seen at FootballCo for several years now. Just in the last year or so, we've worked with the likes of Lisa Freestyle for Kia, their Movement That Inspires campaign. We've worked with Adidas launching or relaunching the Predator, with Charlie Iacono showing this inherent key characteristic of the boot, which is control. We're part of EA Sports, FIFA, Volta, street football side of the game. So we've seen it a lot. Why do you think freestyle is so appealing to brands these days?
Exactly as you kind of hinted at within there, what freestyle is, and I might have mentioned this earlier, is a vehicle. It's a vehicle for young people to achieve their dreams and to travel and to live from the ball, which is every child's dream almost in one way. We go into places that nobody else can. Whether that's backstage in the dressing rooms at the Champions League final, or the hospitality boxes to entertain clients at the other major events. It's that dance infusion which gives us another translation to wider audiences. So for brands, the value is we can tell their message and their value and their story and showcase their product in a very translatable way, in a very accessible way, which is ultimately the dream of a marketeer, right? You got to just assume that putting your brand on the chest of a shirt now is going to get you more visibility and brand awareness is long gone, in my opinion. Like you need to engage your audience, you need to talk to them, and freestyle brings out emotions. It's again that fusion with music is so critical to the sport, and through that we can really reach big audiences as a result.
Absolutely. I think we've found increasingly that brands, and indeed the football world as a whole, everybody's realised that football can't stand on its own. It's part of, people aren't uni interest. They don't just want to consume football 24/7. They want to know about the fashion side of things, or they're interested in music or film or whatever else it is. And I think brands and indeed media organizations which accept that and appreciate it and manage to implement plans which take into account all of that are those which have more success. Which brands do you think get freestyle and have incorporated it well into their marketing strategies?
So, well, first of all, it's not exclusive for sure. So that's the beauty here, is that anyone can access it, and there's lots of ways to do so. The ones that have really shone for me, I would say Red Bull. First of all, of course, we've worked with them for now 12 years, and yeah, it's a very natural link for them compared to the other urban sports that they work with. Incidentally, for now, it's their biggest for social traction. Freestyle and street style is their biggest one in their whole roster. So whilst the other events, the Crash Dice and other things, may be more talked about, let's say, in general public because of mainstream TV maybe picking up on it. In terms of social media, we're the biggest property for them. Others that have stood out for me, I like to look back actually in South America. Bridgestone Tires, we worked really nicely with around Copa Libertadores for 4 years. And yeah, again, just any brand that really understands the community opportunity and can translate this to a local and then international level, as they did with us, was that felt really successful. UEFA have done some amazing things with us as well. So on a more institutional level, it's been interesting seeing how organisations such as UEFA, especially on the women's football side, have embraced freestyle.
Let's dive into that a little bit, because I'd have two comments on that. Firstly, it's interesting that UEFA, probably perceived by many as a more serious organisation than some of your brands like Red Bull. It's interesting that they would turn to freestyle. And secondly, you mentioned the women's side of things, and it really does feel to me like women's freestyle is given the same amount of visibility as men's, and it does seem to be on a par. So I suppose two questions there. Firstly, can you tell us a bit about this UEFA partnership? And secondly, how does that tie into the overall picture of female freestyle?
Definitely, yeah. So UEFA, for some years I've been working with them on other projects anyway, and so to hear about the evolution of how they started to really separate the rights for the women's game and really give more of a dedicated stage to women's football as a whole, was number one link. Then by not coincidence, but also just hard work as well, of course, two of the main freestylers in our community, you mentioned Lisa already, but also Liv Cook in the UK, were doing many ambassadorial features for them. They were making little YouTube series, they were appearing at stadiums, and they both have come from the football world as well, so they knew a lot of the pro players now as friends, so they had a very organic, very natural tie to the women's game. So how it came about was purely an extension of that, and saying to UEFA, there's already overlap. Let's now, in sync with you isolating the women's game, we chose to do the same. So just to go back one step from that, since day one, we've been very particular about the fact that, first of all, on our stage, men and women can play together. So there is no divide. There's a non-contact sport, but there is it's complete parity. So anyone can get on that stage. The women's only events, however, really kicked in because of this relationship with UEFA, where we said, okay, the women, we had women's only events within our World Opens, but we never did a women's only series of other competitions. So that was the first opportunity that we said, yes, let's do this in parallel, so that we can launch an event together, but also roll out more dedicated events to women. But as I said, since day one, we've always had same prize money, same treatment. Everyone, you're a freestyler. You're not a female freestyler and a male freestyler. You're a freestyler, and that's really resonated. The community, responds really well to that. So we were unique in that regard. But the opportunity was the Women's Champions League. Needed something else to engage the corporates, but also content for the fans. And we incorporated the first European female-only freestyle competition. And the best 8 from a series of online qualifiers, the best 8 were flown into Budapest to compete the day before the Women's Champions League final that was held there. So really nice partnership, and we're hoping for much more together in the future as well.
What were or are UEFA's objectives in that? Is this about driving fan engagement or reaching new audiences? Is it about consumer perception of UEFA as an organisation? Or is this simply about delivering on their one game for all equality message?
It touches upon all, but I would say the standout one for me goes back to what you mentioned earlier about where freestyle sits, and it's very much about inspiring new audiences, driving participation in the game, the industry around football as a whole. So TikTok audiences, how do we get more girls playing football would be one of the key drivers. And one potential solution there is your Liv Cooks, your Lisas, many other freestylers are so inspirational and so relative to young girls of today. You know, they want to aspire to be recognised in their own way, and so they can just translate in a way that a professional footballer, male or female, can't, because of the brand that's around them, the restrictions of the club and the federation. So freestyle really just breaks down those barriers and reaches new audience for them.
One other campaign I wanted to touch on was the Dortmund work you've done recently in partnership with Evonik, I think. Can you tell us about what that entailed?
Yes, so Dortmund have been one of, I'd say, but certainly the main, the biggest one, let's say, of the pioneering clubs, in my opinion, who see freestyle for what it actually is and not just a halftime show. And that's been, I'd say, that's a bit of a bugbear, a bit of a frustration for the community over the years, is the expectation that the invite to go and do a halftime performance, but we won't pay you because you can be reaching tens of thousands of people by doing this show. And lots of clubs have done that over the years, and it just shows the lack of understanding, really, that these young people are full-time athletes. This is their job. And yes, it's a prestige to do performances in such amazing arenas, but it's not their priority. So Dortmund really understood that, and they saw, again, they want to reach new audiences. But importantly, it was through the COVID time, so it was through the last 12 months where they couldn't do their tours and their trophy tours and their legends tours that they were doing throughout Asia, especially, and North America. So this was a way to actually, not overexhaust the players and actually embrace a new genre of fan. So we put together a squad of 9 to go in sync with their logo and their name. 9 freestylers across the world to become the BVB squad. They were judging a fan competition, so like a skills and trick shot competition, just to create some fun content and entertain their fans. The winners won a whole range of prizes from that. And then, of course, there was some mini wins as well, where Erlend from our side, I keep getting the names mixed here, but Erlend, who is the world champion from Norway, could obviously link up with Haaland at the team, and there was a really nice kind of exchange of recognition of one another's talents, and it was really not forced. It was Haaland started it and said, "Hey, I know about these guys, and they're from very near to my hometown. I want to do something." He wanted to send them a shirt and just reach out to him on social. So there was a number of layers that really made it fun. And going forward, we're going to be doing much more with the club across the world.
It sounds like genuinely interesting content between club and brand. How important is authenticity in this content, and indeed freestyle in general, when a brand is trying to take advantage of this movement, of this culture, of this cool sport, and trying to participate and integrate itself within it?
It's, well, again, another critical factor. And for me, that word, so authenticity, really comes to life in the context of content here. when you consider what is expected of these athletes, and it's a super simple call to action, which is the only thing I require when I'm talking to any agency or brand, is, as I did from day one, listen to the freestyler. So don't presume that just because you've been working on campaigns for the last 15 years and you know what consumer behavior might be, you're not going to know. I can hands up say now, you are not going to know what the audience on TikTok are responding to the content that this person is already doing. So just listening to understand how they tell stories, what content does work, what doesn't, what doesn't work, what does work. And they're amazingly creative. The young people they're not only taught themselves to be incredible athletes, but they're all videographers, most of them as well. They're all photographers. They understand content more than you and I. So embracing them, listening to them, treat it as a focus group session if you want to be, traditional in some sense, but that one moment there provides authenticity throughout any campaign. That's all you need to do.
And what's the role of the WFFA in this search for authenticity? Are you the sort of recruitment consultant up front who partners X freestyler with X brand or club or federation? Are you involved in the creative process where you're participating in idea generation? Or are you a sort of policeman in the middle representing the freestyler and trying to stop brands from getting them to do stuff that they don't want to do or wouldn't really work authentically?
So, not to the last point, definitely not. We would never restrict anyone. At the end of the day, freestylers are probably one of the most accessible groups of influencers online. You can direct message any of them on Instagram today, and you'll probably be able to talk back to them very quickly. They're super humble and approachable people. How we've done it is we're focused on the governance of the sport, and we want to grow the sport to a level where it's accepted in society around the world, and again with Olympic aspirations. So that's our kind of organizational outset. Naturally, as a result of doing all that, the brands approach us and the agencies approach us, and myself and Steve, the current president of the association, we tend to be coordinating a lot of campaigns. We don't manage that through the WFFA. There's another couple of agencies that we recommend in terms of the commercial side, let's say, of invoicing and managing that. But we would be the advisors. So we would come in and just say, right, let's get around the table and figure out what's needed. And if there's lots of work involved, of course, that would involve consultancy fees here and there. But it's not about us owning the athletes, first and foremost. So that's straight up on the table. They are their own entities. But of course, most of the time as well now, people are wanting the events to go in sync with this. So that's where it all does overlap, where we can bring campaigns to life with our events, with athletes, and we coordinate as and when needed.
I want to talk about what makes a successful freestyler, because it strikes me that if you're the best footballer in the world, you're the best footballer in the world, and you're loved and you're well remunerated and you play for one of the top teams and you're successful and win lots of trophies. But with a freestyler, it feels like there's a bit more than that as well. It strikes me that the personality of a freestyler is crucial. And I'm going to point to probably someone I'm going to point to, and that's the F2 freestylers, who I think by their own admission would not win any world championships at freestyle, but yet have 10 million followers on Instagram, 13 million followers on YouTube. And they seem to have nailed this combination, the magic formula of ability plus charisma or personality equals success. Would you agree that charisma and that personality is particularly important in freestyle?
It is to succeed in the level that they have. I mean, you're correct. They're phenomenal at what they do, and they were not only the first movers, which gave them a huge advantage in terms of YouTube and the monetization of content. They literally have raised the level and the bar to incredible heights. So, and self-made, so it's fully deserved. The fact is, there's a lot of envy in the community, and when they look at people like the F2 and how successful they are, because most, as you said, they may not win competitions. Their technical level in freestyle is not on the same level as the world champions at the moment. but again, that doesn't matter. They're not trying to be that. So I think the community, what's again really beautiful about the community is that not everyone wants to be famous. They want to enjoy the ball. They want to earn some money if they can, but most of them are students for context again. So they're younger generation. They're not looking yet at a full-time career. Their dream would be to, of course, but they're just wanting to be that authentic word that you mentioned earlier. You know, they want to be real. They want to be themselves. They want to share in that moment once a year for a week, have a holiday in Prague with all their other friends and peers, and just train together and push their level to unprecedented heights. So yeah, there's a transition though for everyone, and they all get to a point and they're like, okay, I'm finishing my studies now. Is there enough in this for me to live from this? How do I start to live from this? That's when they start to realize the importance of brand and personality and growing what they're doing. Not all of them. Some of them go into coaching. Some of them, don't want any content plans at all. But definitely, if you want to be a brand influencer and create content, the importance of creating a personality and speaking to audiences speaks for itself.
And do you coach and advise on that?
Yes.
Having been in the world, having seen so many freestylers and seen what's successful and what's not, I suppose, to what extent can it even be coached?
Absolutely. No, it's mentoring rather than coached, I would say. So it goes back to how and why myself and Steve Elias, as I mentioned already, we are big brothers to the whole community. So we spend a lot of our time mentoring, as we would say, to guide them in all kinds of ways, whether it's around creating content or responding to a client brief, or actually just planning out what's going to happen after studies and where's the most realistic route for them. So it's it's a small enough a community that at the moment we can still do that just about, but yeah, to grow this out, of course, we need to start building the team and the whole commercial remit, which is part of our agenda anyway in the coming years.
Talking about that growth, and it feels like the growth is, it's happening now. It's been happening since it was founded, and it's happening quickly. It feels like freestyle's in a great place right now, both in terms of the competitive tournaments and where they're at, and also in the lifestyle, social output, and the popularity that has across social platforms. Where do you see the next phase of growth coming from? What does the future hold for freestyle?
Too much. Where do I start? We are, so the big goal now. So we've had a 10-year organic growth with very few stop points to say, what are we doing next? It's been a very enjoyable journey, let's say, so far. So 2019, before everything really locked down, we were invited to be a medal sport at the African Beach Games, the first ever beach games in Africa. And that opened up our mind to see, okay, this is our big point of differentiation in the football industry. There's a chance here to recognise more athletes all over the world if we pursue this multi-sports games remit alongside the existing events that we have. So what's in hold? Let me just give you some plans. Are the dreams right now would be 2028 LA Olympics to be a showcase sport. We've seen breakdance get through there. We've got parkour, BMX, skate. So it's a natural. There's definitely a movement towards our street sports world, shall we say? And with that, to get there, though, of course, we have to then look at the institution, the organisation, and the structure in particular. So the next 2-3 years will be critical to that in terms of. We have 114 country members right now, but only 13 of them are currently non-profit associated with the local Ministry of Sports. So we've got a lot of onboarding and redevelopment, let's say, of structure on a local level to get there. And then content. back to the purpose of us talking, I guess, really, is we need to grow out. Our aim would be to tenfold put out more content from events, but also the athletes and the whole lifestyle around freestyle to inspire more people.
Well, I've enjoyed watching the journey so far, these 10, 11 years or so, and I look forward to seeing the rest of it as it as it advances over the next few years, and fingers crossed for LA 28 to see freestyle in the Olympics. Dan, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Alex.
Where can listeners find out more about the WFFA?
So any social platform, we're there. But no, I think on most of them, for us as the organisation, it's at the WFFA. You'll find us especially on Instagram as our primary source. But honestly, yeah, if you type in freestyle football or hashtag all you need is a ball, you'll see the athletes all start to use that, and there's plenty of amazing role models to enjoy their content.
Thanks very much, Dan.
Thanks, Alex.
And thank you for listening to today's show. There are some great guests coming up on this new podcast series. So if you want the inside scoop on the business of football, please make sure you're following this podcast in your preferred podcast platform. If you liked this, the full episode will be available on footballco.com, and check out the show archives for more of the same. All the best.